Hi, I'm Zoe Starr, and welcome to my show, Paranormal Extraction. And yes, we have something totally different on today. All the way from England, we have author Peter Laws, and we have a lot more to say about him. It's very interesting. I want you guys to think about this because we've never ever talked about this. Why are we so obsessed with the paranormal and supernatural? Have I ever talked about that? No, but Peter has some great stuff to talk about. He also has a book that you can get on Amazon called The Frighteners, a journey through our cultural fascination with the macabre. Okay, he's also a podcaster, BBC, Uncanny, ordained minister, and he's very well known in England, and he'll tell you a little bit more about himself. Okay, so here we go. Hey, Peter, all the way from England. Oh my God, thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it. This is such an interesting subject. But I want you just, if I missed anything about you, why don't you go ahead and tell people, well, where to find you or anything. I know you got this new thing, this Uncanny, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean, firstly, thank you for having me. It's good to be with you and to everyone listening. You know, this is a subject that I've always been interested in, and I feel a sense of kind of kinship and friendship with anyone else who finds it interesting.
sure.
Especially when being interested in it sometimes can make you a bit of a freak to kind of mainstream people. So I feel that. So it's good to be with like-minded people. But yeah, my name is Peter Laws. I live in the UK. And I've always been fascinated with spooky things, and it started for me with horror movies. I'm still a big horror movie fan, but the paranormal and ghost stories always fascinated me through my life. And yeah, they were things that were really important to me when I was younger, and I've ended up, having a career in those sorts of subjects, horror, spooky things, scary
Wow.
things. So it's been fun.
Well, you're really lucky, that this is
I
your
am.
actual career. Just tell me a little bit. I know I want to say congratulations that you just got this thing called Uncanny. What exactly
Yes,
is
yeah,
that?
I am. Yeah, I mean, I host three different podcasts, which is a bit much, I get, but but yeah, I do three different podcasts. So I
Yeah.
do a podcast which is the most popular one, which is called Frightful, which is scary true stories. Then I do another one called Our Curious Past, which is forgotten history, and another one called Creepy Cove Community Church, which perhaps we can chat about later. But the other one that I'm involved with is a BBC show called Uncanny, and that's been a fascinating project to be part of.
Yeah.
It's gone into the second season now, so I'm currently in the current episode this week, and I'll be on Radio Four, the BBC Radio Four tonight, talking about it. But I was in the first season as well, a few episodes of that. And what that show does is it asks people who have had strange experiences to come into the studio. They share the most weird and freaky things that have happened. And often, Zoe, those people are non-believers. They don't believe this stuff exists. And the most common sentence we get from people is, "I don't believe in ghosts, but I saw one, and here's my story." So they'll tell us this story, and what happens is the presenter listens to this story, and then they bring in people. They call them experts. Bring in experts to
Oh,
discuss the case. And so I come over and discuss the case from a sort of believing perspective, and then we get people in from, for example, the show I'm on this week with the former editor of Skeptic magazine. She comes in, she gives her opinion on the case, and then it's left to the listeners to decide what they think. But it's been a huge success. It's one of I think it's like one of the biggest podcasts of last year. It's launched into
wow.
a live theater um, presentation, which is going around theaters. It's just been commissioned as a BBC Two TV
Well,
show.
I just love it.
So
It kind of sounds a little bit like Ancient Aliens, where they kind of show you a little bit about what's going on and then they have the experts come on and talk about it. But very few shows are about what you're doing on this one, which is why it's a success.
yeah, exactly. And I've always been fascinated with those sorts of things. I When I was younger, I trained in sociology, which is basically trying to understand why people think the way they do. Why does culture move in certain ways? So I've always been fascinated not only with why I'm drawn to horror films and scary things and spooky stories, but why everybody else is. And Uncanny's been a good example of that because it's really hit a nerve, I think, particularly because it doesn't come from one angle. So it doesn't come from the believer angle and say,
Yeah,
aliens absolutely
exactly.
exist
Right.
or ghosts absolutely exist.
Right.
It comes from, neither does it come from the other and
Right.
say, let's debunk it, it's a load of rubbish. It gives space for both
I
opinions.
love
And
that. I just
yeah, and we
love
find that
it.
that really resonates with people because people aren't that keen on being told what to think. So they want the information. So it's been a great show to be part of.
Well, okay. I mean, I love it. I already said that. But today, I know we're going to talk about why are we so obsessed, okay, with like, let's talk about Sasquatch, aliens, cryptids,
Mm,
ghosts,
yeah,
things of that type. People seem to be uh, really obsessed with whatever they're doing. Um, and
yeah.
then that's where you get the experts like that come on my show that have
Mm,
bestsellers or things like that.
mm.
And that's their life. So, what is your whole opinion on this? Since we've talked before, I was just shocked on what we spoke about. So, I want you to
Mm.
just go with what you did before.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's various opinions on why the paranormal is so popular today, and some people would say it's simply because there's more of it, there's more availability in terms of the internet and TV, multiple TV channels, and so therefore we're fed more of the paranormal and are enjoying it. There's one theory. There's other theories to say that perhaps there's been a growth in actual paranormal experience. People seeing
Yeah,
more weird lights in the
exactly.
sky, or indeed having freaky experiences in their own home and wanting to discuss it, and therefore it creates a sort of community around that. So I think that's absolutely true. But my angle on this topic is perhaps a little bit different, but I
Yeah,
think it's I
yeah,
think it's
yeah,
persuasive. I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
and I do think it is linked. Our fascination with the paranormal today in 2023 is directly linked to the dwindling numbers that would call themselves religious. It's connected to the decline of organized religion, and we've seen, I think, a paranormal develop as I wouldn't necessarily say the paranormal is a new religious movement, but it doesn't half, and I'll share with you some of the reasons why, it doesn't half tick some incredibly similar boxes that religion does. So that,
Right,
yes, so that's where I think this interest has come from. So
right.
happy to
So
unpack that if
what
you
you're
want.
talking about is like a box, like the Bible, where that's the box. You're talking about people aren't into the box anymore. Is
Yeah, I
is
mean,
that what you're
because I
talking
mean,
about?
I kind of came of age really in the kind of the 1980s. That's when I started to become like aware of culture, sort of growing up in the 80s and into the 1990s. And throughout that time, I've seen the steady decline of organized religion, particularly Christianity,
Yes.
in England. I know in America it's still been fairly big, but even now, Christianity is dwindling in terms of its popularity.
Right.
And so I've watched that over the course of my life, and there's good reasons, of course, why people turn their backs on organized religion. They find it prejudiced or
Sure.
bigoted or intolerant. I remember a few years ago I was writing a magazine article, and I interviewed a whole bunch of different witches and Wiccans
Cool.
and high priestesses to try and understand their journey of spirituality.
Yes.
And
Right.
I was amazed at the amount of people I spoke to who said, actually, I was really fascinated with Christianity, particularly I was interested in Jesus, for example. But when I went to church, everything was just all about masculine things. It was relentlessly about God as a male, and it had no interest in feminine things. But
Yeah.
also, they said when I went to church, Christians didn't seem bothered about the environment. They couldn't care less about climate change or ecology. So they wanted to experience spirituality, but they found that church just didn't tick the box, whereas Wicca did because it's based around the feminine. and around ecology and nature. So there's been this decline in religious observance. But you might think that therefore, then everyone's atheist then, because if we're rejecting religion, we will turn to atheism. But while
Right.
atheism,
No.
but while atheism is still significant, it hasn't become as big as people seem to think. And so there's a group in the middle. And if you're a sociologist, you call them the nons. That means they're kind of they're non-religious. But I tend to prefer the term the in-betweeners, and it's a group that live between. They're not ready to call themselves atheists. They're not. They don't want to say there's nothing, but
Right.
neither do they feel comfortable being part of organized religion and church and having all these strict kind of rules around what they believe. And so they exist in this middle ground, and it's created what you could call a spiritual quest culture. It's a
That's the term that I use. If people want to know what I'm into, it's
yeah,
I'm a spiritual light worker,
right,
or a
okay,
light
yeah,
worker. So also, a Wiccan, if you want to call me that. Not
hmm,
really, I'm not a high priestess or anything like
yeah,
that, but I'm kind of a mishmash of a lot of things. And what I found on interviewing people, that they will turn the channel off and not listen to the rest of it if they hear the word God or Jesus. They
yeah,
don't.
exactly,
They will not listen to it. They will just go
yes,
boom. So I want you
mm,
guys out there, please just listen. He's talking about all these different things, which is pretty cool concept. So
yeah. You're dead right. And to be honest, I mean, because I did become a Christian in my early 20s, but I'm not. A lot of Christians I know think I'm super, like, I don't know, dodgy. I don't know what the right word is, but shifty, because I'm so open to
right.
other ideas. I'm quite open to other things and open to possibly being wrong. And that can freak some of my fellow Christians out. But up until I was a Christian in my early 20s, I was very, very anti church. I was in a band for a while called Creatures of the Night. We used to sing we used to sing songs about spitting on the Bible and that God was a waste of space. And I remember I used to go into my religion teacher at school. I'd sneak into her room and I'd find the Bibles and I would circle the name Satan in her
Oh
Bibles.
my God, you're
Just,
so
yeah, no,
funny.
I just wanted to freak her out, and it was weird because I wasn't a Satanist, but religion just really wound me up, particularly Christianity, because
Yeah.
it seemed to tell me you can't be yourself. You
Yeah.
can't watch the sort. You got to stop watching horror films. You can't be
Yeah,
interested
I
in the
know.
paranormal, and that is just because we live in a world where we have choice. Consumerism is the watchword of our day. If we go down to the supermarket, we can choose from multiple brands of cereal. That's We're used to making choice, and the
Right.
same happens with our worldview. We live in a world now where we are allowed to have different views. But there would have been a time, Zoe, when if you expressed what you expressed to me just a moment before, that you're a light worker, that you're involved in Wicca or witchcraft, you wouldn't not only would you not have been allowed to do that, you would have been actively persecuted and possibly even
Well,
executed
I would have been
because of
burned
that.
at the stake.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so that should tell us what a different
I
environment we live
know.
in. We live in this world which yes, I would call a spiritual quest culture, which means
Yes.
everyone has the permission to go out and explore for themselves a spirituality that makes sense to them. And what I find is that increasingly people are finding that the world of the paranormal, be that ghosts, aliens, or cryptids, um, those things do offer a form of spirituality which is perfectly suited to the modern mindset.
That's just
Uh,
it's just mind-boggling. Okay. So,
yeah,
yeah, so you're tying in, like, let's just say we have some people that are only into Bigfoot. I mean, they're obsessed with it.
yeah,
You can go on Facebook and you can find groups, okay?
hmm,
And there's some that are so serious about it that, I mean, if you post one thing, it's like, you're off. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think that these people that has become like their religion?
Yes, although they probably wouldn't use those terms.
No, no,
Indeed,
no.
they might be offended by that. But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
sometimes when people talk to me about my Christianity, sometimes I get offended by them calling me religious, which sounds weird. But you know, the things I like about Christianity is specifically, you know, the Jesus stuff. And Jesus himself was very annoyed with religious people. And so, uh,
Interesting.
so he was quite happy to hang out with the, you know, the prostitutes and the tax collectors, but the people he consistently tells off in the Bible are those religious leaders who say you've got to do this to follow the pattern.
Right.
So yeah, so that used to annoy me, and that's why I was antagonistic towards Christianity. And then eventually, in a long story short, I became a Christian in my 20s. But I never lost that interest in the macabre and the spooky. And so now that I'm, you know, work in that area and have lived in that area for such a long time, I just am able to see similarities between,
Mm.
for example, the motivations why people turn up at church and why people start getting into the paranormal. There's a surprising amount of overspill. For example, I meet people who start getting interested in the paranormal, let's say ghosts, because
Hmm.
they lose a loved one, and they find themselves, you know, pining to see them again, understandably so, and they
Sure.
want to get more evidence to tell them and to bring comfort and hope
Right.
that maybe death is not the end. Perfectly respectable reason to get into the paranormal. So I meet people like that, but equally I meet the same motivations with people who turn up at church and say, I've lost a loved one, I'm looking for some sort of answer.
So
And
it's the
I'm willing
same.
to come to church.
So it ties into the same thing then, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
it's the same sort of motivation.
Right.
And what's really interesting is another motivation for being interested in both religion and also the paranormal, and people like can often choose one or the other, is death anxiety. That people are scared about death and their own death, and understandably so. I'm scared about that too. I
Yeah,
find that a
right.
bit disturbing.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is when you look statistically, the people who are the least scared of death are um, very strong fundamentalist religious believers. They tend to be quite chilled out when it comes to the topic of death. I've had that experience. I've sat with elderly Christians about to die, and they talk about death as if it's like a promotion to go. They're excited
Wow.
almost. They're, yeah, I'm going to heaven. I can't wait to go to glory. It's quite inspiring, and I wish I had that positivity sometimes. But the other group that have the least death anxiety are atheists, statistically speaking.
Wow.
Because for an atheist, death is just death. It doesn't
Right.
mean it's any less horrible. And when they lose a loved one, they are as devastated as anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they don't fall into the trap of starting to think, oh, you know, my husband Bob was killed in a freak lawnmower accident, and was that because he displeased the gods, or did he do
Right.
something to deserve that? Or is he now in hell?
Yeah.
Is he in
Yeah.
heaven?
Oh
Is
God.
is he condemned to be a
Oh
ghost,
my
to
God.
kind of walk up and down the corridors
Yeah.
of our house? And you know, that sort of stuff is quite stressful to think about. And so for the atheists, they tend to, when it comes to death, yes, it devastates them and they miss their loved ones immensely, but it's just a bit less complicated than saying heaven and hell and all this other stuff. The people who have the biggest death anxiety are the in-betweeners, the nones, this big group in the middle.
You
And
mean like
they,
the group in the middle that what are into Sasquatch, UFOs,
yeah, well, it's anyone,
metaphysics,
yeah,
cryptids? Are you
yeah,
talking about
or
those people?
yeah,
Or
yes. So it's basically, you could call them the agnostics, or the people who are, technically speaking, the definition of someone who is a non, or in betweener, is somebody who is open spiritually to there being something, but they don't regularly go to church.
Oh,
So that's
yeah.
the difference. So they're not part of an organized religion,
Right.
but they do have a spirituality of sorts. They're interested in the supernatural in one way or another. Now you could argue that things like Bigfoot and even aliens are not particularly supernatural,
Yeah.
because it could be just another animal, like a biological animal, let's say. But this is another interesting thing that's happened over the last few decades. It's that because we've had this massive kind of exodus, people leaving organized religion and not wanting to go to join the atheist clan, they start to get plugged into the paranormal, but they bring their spiritual, like, ideas with them, their
Sure.
religious ideas with them. So this, you can see this blatantly, like in the 1950s, when people talked about aliens, we were talking about flying saucers with potential other
Right.
beings on them, but they were
Well,
just beings from another planet.
yeah, they
You
now
know,
this
they
there this is a freak out, okay? What's happening is if these aliens, okay, come down, okay? I
yeah,
personally believe it's Project Bluebeam because I'm into I'm into some pretty weird stuff,
okay,
conspiracy theories, things like that.
oh
But
yeah,
that the general public is going to, they think that we're going to be kind of like cattle to them, or,
hmm,
put in cages, or that the Catholic Church is just going to go downhill, okay? And religion is going to go downhill once which they already are. The government's already said we have UAPs, okay, Peter? I
hmm.
mean, so this movement that we have is moving away from the Bible. This is my point of view, because of what's happening with spaceships, aliens, UAPs, whatever you want to talk about. They're saying, well, wait a second. The Bible isn't really true. So are the Catholics scared to death? I think that they have said something about aliens, though, right?
I mean, there have been comments from even to the Vatican of people being open-minded,
Yes.
of high-ranking, Catholics, for example, being open-minded to the possibility of life on other planets. Yes.
Okay, so you think by them doing this that people are still going to be able to stay into their religious beliefs then?
No. Well, it all depends on what time frame we're talking about. I suppose what I'm saying is that things go in stages of belief. So religion may be sinking in popularity now, but once it gets low enough to be unpopular and kind of not the dominant idea, it will become attractive again. It will become trendy again. Like
Interesting.
ideas go in fashions. That's how it works. Groups tend to, they have an idea and it becomes dominant, and then they start to think, I'm not so sure about this, I'm questioning this, and a new idea comes up, and once that gets big, it takes over, and then when that becomes the dominant idea, whatever's small starts to challenge it. It's just like fashion, in the same way as
Interesting.
clothes. If something's really
Wow.
fashionable in this summer, by next summer it'll be lame because it won't be in anymore.
Well, yeah,
But
it's
the
like
point,
go on, it's like having your producer tell you, yeah, we have the green light, and then all of a sudden they say, no, because UAPs just came out with the government.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
they don't want to do anything else other than what's the popularity at that time,
Mm, yeah,
and that's what they're going for. So, okay,
yeah. But
so
the point I'm making about, say, aliens, for example, and others, is to say that because so many people have left organized religion and are now getting plugged into the paranormal, they are bringing religious ideas into the paranormal space. So in the 1950s, if we talked about aliens, they would just be other creatures, extraterrestrials from another planet, which is fascinating and
yes,
bizarre and interesting, but that's all. Again, if we talk about Bigfoot in the, say, 1960s, it would just be Bigfoot is a hidden animal that we haven't seen yet. It's mysterious, it's fascinating, but it's just an animal. Now, because so many you've got this religious influence coming into the paranormal space, now aliens are no longer just aliens. They are potentially ancient aliens that have been, are like, who may have even created us and who may be
Yeah, yeah,
somehow who could be gods to us.
right.
And similarly with Sasquatch, I mean, I remember when I first started reading about this sort of stuff, and even in the 1980s, Sasquatch was just an animal. Whereas now, I've spoken at paranormal conferences where people have gotten up and said from the front that actually Sasquatch is more of a spiritual being, that he has some sort of kind of, or he or she has like supernatural powers, that they can teleport, or they're interdimensional beings
Well, it's
and all
kind of
that sort of stuff.
interesting because when I was doing an OBE, I went to their planet, and
Oh,
it was exactly like you said. It was they were that way. They came through wormholes, out of portals, and an absolutely wonderful species. Now they
mm,
were a certain color. Okay, so I don't know about the ones that are white or this, but that was my experience. And they took me with them and showed me, and they were gathering saplings from Earth to take back to their
right.
planet. So, that was fascinating for me. And that's just my belief because I was taken there. So,
Yeah,
but you're talking about, that, they're what I believe in, and that's what I believe in, where they come from.
yeah,
Scientists actually sat around a big table. I watched this. They came from all different, ways. No one knew each other. There was like six of them. They all talked about Bigfoot, and they came up with a species of unknown origin. And that
mm,
was recently. So they're starting to kind of go into the direction that these are actually real. Okay.
right. Yeah, I'm very open to the possibility of these things being, particularly Bigfoot, particularly aliens as well, being real. But I just find it fascinating how the discussion about these things, from like ghosts, is another good example. When I was growing up, and particularly back in the kind of heyday of ghost hunting in Britain, Harry Price and Borley Rectory and everything, people ultimately were looking for, when they said ghosts, they were talking about the like discarnate entities, the departed spirits. Like it would be a person who died and they come back. However, these days, if you turn on a paranormal investigation show or whatever, you will. It won't take you long before you hear someone not call a ghost, but might start using religious terminology like demon, and talk about it's a demonic presence. And
Interesting.
yeah, and that is, who knows, maybe it is a demonic presence. I'm not, how do I know? But what I'm saying is, you didn't get that before. Why are we getting it now? It's because we have this influx of people who have maybe rejected religion because they don't want to go to church each week, but they still have that kind of religious makeup in them, which starts to look at things in religious ways. So aliens become like gods, Sasquatch become supernatural, angelic, almost like, or demonic creatures, and ghosts particularly become demonic. So for me, I find it a really fascinating time to be alive, because I'm sympathetic towards people who are just trying to figure out what's going on in the world.
Well, and
Um,
then there's a lot of people on there, like you said, one of the shows is they that you have is that, they see a ghost, okay, and let's just say they're religious,
yeah,
and they have this experience and they don't really know where to go,
yeah,
So then they're searching for the answer of, hey, why did I see my,
yes, yeah,
uncle? So then they go on the quest of kind of
absolutely.
releasing their
Mm,
religion because
yeah.
it doesn't jive with what their religious views are.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And that's very insightful that you mentioned that, because that is another common reason for people to move into the paranormal, but also to move into, or alternatively, move into like churches or religion. And I read about this, that this is in my book, The Frighteners, A Journey Through Our Cultural Fascination with the Macabre. There's a chapter in that to try and understand why people are interested in ghosts and the paranormal. And I always just assumed it was really just people kind of looking for hope and answers in
Yeah.
a scary world. That's what I thought. But then I was really surprised at how many people I met who said, "Listen, Peter, I had no interest in the paranormal whatsoever,
Yes.
but then something inexplicable happened to me,
Yes.
and because that happened, I'm now trying to make sense of that."
Mm-hmm.
The Uncanny show I mentioned earlier is a lot of that, people trying to make sense of something they found inexplicable. But that happens in church as well. So, I just the other day, I was talking to a woman who said, who told me about a man she knew, and he was getting baptized in a church, and he got up and he shared to the church why he got baptized, and he shared that he used to drive past this church every morning on his motorcycle, and then one morning he drove past it and he heard what he believed was the voice of God saying, "Go into the church now. I want you to go in the church now." He got off his bike, went into the church, and then he heard a sermon that kind of completely changed his life. He became religious, and his life was changed. And the point I'm making is
What
that,
is this?
again, it's exactly the same thing. It's people who face something inexplicable and they reach for the thing that naturally helps them make sense of it. So some people go to church because maybe they're not quite as antagonistic towards it as others, or they see it as potentially credible. But for growing numbers of people, they're not ready to go to church because they feel like that's just telling them what to do. And I can understand why they would think that. But instead, they go to the paranormal
Uh-huh.
because the paranormal offers them a chance to explore very supernatural ideas, the potential of life after death, even the potential of good and evil, the potential that we're not alone. In a sense, the paranormal and religion ask the same question, and
Mm-hmm.
it's, is there anybody there? And that's,
Wow.
up there or out there, God or ghosts or whatever.
Right.
But it also asks the question, is there anybody there with me? Are there any other fellow travelers trying to explore this crazy world we live in?
Sure,
And
like
that's why
guardian angels, those kind of things, come into
Yeah,
play
but
there
I'm
too.
particularly thinking of just other human beings who are trying to understand what life's about. And so this is why, like, churches develop communities. That's what churches are. The word church doesn't even mean building; it means a community of people. It's about the people. So you can't ever go into a church as such because you could go into a church building, but the church is the people, and then they
Hmm.
go into a building. So the church is scattered all over the place. So the church is a community, but the paranormal is also a community.
Yes, it is.
And it is thriving today because it has the possibility of linking unusually open-minded people
Right.
across the world through the internet. So there would have been a time, let's say 50 years ago, where you and I could have had maybe let's say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we can connect via the internet, but 50 years ago we couldn't.
Right, exactly.
And so the ideas are isolated and they never get a chance to grow particularly big. But now they can grow huge because, well, like now I'm sitting in England
I know.
hanging out with you, and we're sharing stuff. You people are listening to this,
Yeah,
we're connecting,
it's
and it's
great.
building community. It's like
Yeah.
friends just hanging out, trying to understand things. So it ticks a lot of the same boxes as religion. But one of the biggest reasons I think why the paranormal is interesting and suitable to modern people is because of something that is different from religion. And that is, it doesn't really have any moral expectations. Now, let me explain that.
Exactly.
I'm not for a second say I'm not.
Exactly.
I don't want to suggest that people who don't go to church and are interested in UFOs and ghosts aren't moral people. The opposite, in fact, sometimes they can be even more moral than some Christians I know.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to accept that when, like, religion it isn't just about the metaphysical. It isn't just about spiritual things. Most religions, if not all, come with a kind of expectation to treat other people well, to even love your enemies, to give to charity, I'm not saying believers do this, they should, but often they don't. But the inherent part of religion is not just about your relationship with your maker, it's
Right.
about being a good citizen, being kind,
Well,
looking
you know
after
what,
homeless
Peter,
people, supposed to be.
I gotta jump in on this one, okay?
Yeah, do.
My experience, when when I was raised in Schuyler, we went to a church and
Hmm.
every Sunday, and I was really into that. And I really changed after my divorce.
Hmm.
I was like the Chanel PTA mom. Everything was perfect, the dog in the purse, the whole bit, right? And when I got the divorce, I went back to being a tomboy. And so I
Oh.
went into church and I had a bunch of tattoos on my back that I had gotten done. And do you know that they ignored me
Yeah.
like I did not exist?
Hmm.
And that
That's shocking.
the preacher would no longer allow me to come and speak to him, all because of the way I looked. Now, when I
Shocking.
was the Chanel lady and there was money and they knew there was money, they wanted to be our best friends. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I after all of that and having this community and feeling a part of
Mm.
it, I was into metaphysics anyways,
Yeah.
but still, and just pushed to the side like just we don't want you anymore just because of the way I looked. I was like, oh, no way
Yeah.
am I going here again. I am done. So, I
Mm.
got a trike. I did all kinds
Yeah.
of crazy
That's
things,
painful.
after that. But, I just had to throw that in on what happened to me. And when that
I'm glad you
happened,
did.
yeah,
I'm glad you did, and I'm so sorry that you've had that experience. But your experience is replicated so many times, and this is one of the reasons. This is one of the things that frustrates me about religion. It's that they don't. They so often do not live up to the central tenets of their belief, particularly Christianity, which is all about loving your enemy, like Jesus reaching out for the outcast, making
they
a
didn't do
beeline
that
for the.
with me at all.
Exactly, yes, they do the opposite. They say push the
It's
outcast further away, which
horrible.
Jesus would just be, tearing his hair out
I
about.
mean, can you
So
imagine sitting in the back? 'Cause I hadn't been there for so long, and everybody knowing me, and like not one person would talk to me. I was just
horrible.
devastated,
Yeah, it's humiliating.
devastated. And this happens to a lot of people.
It does.
I mean,
Yeah,
Peter, it's really scary, and so then
yeah.
they get into, I think for me anyways, I became a doctor of metaphysics and was doing all this other stuff and with metaphysical stuff, and it just really took a lot of passion for me. And the
Hmm.
people weren't anything like what they were in church. They were real. They were
Yeah.
talking about things like you said that
Hmm.
questioned, their
Yeah.
beliefs. And so, that's why I have my show, because I'm addicted, okay, to hearing about UFOs and with bestsellers or people that are on TV or what their trip is. Okay, it could be
Yeah.
anything, cryptids or whatever. And I have had no one crazy on, and they all make sense, Peter.
Mm. Yeah.
They
But I
all make
think it's.
sense.
But what they also do is they kind of scratch a similar itch to what religion is supposed to scratch, in the
Right.
sense that it makes you feel connected, and it also opens your mind to a metaphysical world, which is precisely what religion's supposed to
That's
do.
exactly
Um,
what that you said it in the perfect words.
yeah,
Perfect.
but just like what you just shared with us, there are so many examples of religions not acting in that way and being exclusive and rude and prejudiced and whatever, that it doesn't surprise me at all why people are leaving churches and
Right.
not wanting to connect, particularly in America. I mean, oh gosh, when I see the culture wars in America, and particularly of the fundamentalist evangelicals in America, who would probably still burn you with the stake, and me,
Yeah.
for some of the things we
Yeah.
talk about. So it's really sad. But the thing about morality is that, so religion is supposed to be kind and loving and giving, and often isn't. Sometimes, by the way, if just for balance, also sometimes it's amazing. So I've had the good fortune to know religious people who have been absolutely amazing to me in my life. And
Right.
even from examples like, when we had our first baby, and then there'd be a knock at the door, and it was people from the local church saying, "Oh, we know you're going to be a bit busy and stressed having a new baby, so we've organized a team and we can cook all of your meals for the next 2 or 3 weeks
Oh
if
yeah,
you'd
yeah,
like."
yeah. The
And stuff
Mormons,
like that.
the Mormons are really into that.
All right, okay, yeah, this was like a Baptist church who did it, and it was just lovely. And so there's definitely nice people everywhere, as well as not nice people. But the point I'm making about morality is that the paranormal community are suspicious, understandably so, of people saying how to live your life and how to behave.
Oh my God, they're totally the opposite. They are, Peter, they are against it. I
Yeah, well, yeah,
cannot
yeah,
mention God or Jesus on any of my shows.
yeah, and like I said, and I can understand that because there's so much baggage that comes with that. But it means that it's actually quite attractive to have a spirituality or an expression of the metaphysical, let's say the paranormal,
Yes, very
which
much so.
doesn't have any demands
No, it
like
does
that.
not. No, it does not.
It can mean that it can become, well, just about the spiritual quest, and doesn't really necessarily include treating other people well. But then most paranormal people I know just do that anyway because they're nice people. But I suppose what would happen, imagine if at the end of every one of your shows,
Mhm.
you like turned to the camera and said, "Well, that was interesting. We had an interesting discussion with Peter tonight. And that just reminds us, everybody, you've got to go out and love your enemy. This week, if someone's nasty to you, be nice to them." People would be like, "Switch this crap off."
No, that's me. That's me.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah. Yes. So this is another reason why the paranormal is so attractive to modern people. It's because we're suspicious of people telling us what to do.
This is it.
And so therefore,
Yes.
we're looking for an expression of spirituality that doesn't doesn't tell us we have to do stuff. We can choose to do stuff. So that's another reason why it's attractive.
Well,
And sorry, were you going to say something?
yeah, so that's really what it's about when you're speaking, like what your last two sentences were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that the gist of it?
Oh, well, yeah, it's part of the gist, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but I mean, I would say I'm weird, I suppose, because I exist in both worlds. So I exist in the paranormal world, but like tomorrow morning, I'll be going to church, and for some of them, if they knew the sorts of stuff I'd be interested in, they might be a bit freaked out. But most of them are quite chilled out. But I will actually find it helpful to sit there and be challenged in my, are you being kind-hearted, or I find that helpful because I want to try and be like that, and I'm often not.
Yeah.
But not everyone likes that, so I get that.
Well,
But
with the
another reason,
metaphysics, that's pretty much what they're all about. In the metaphysical groups,
right? Yeah, I mean,
is with the
and yes,
kind-hearted and those kinds of things.
yes,
You find that in the metaphysical groups.
And
Yeah.
of course, people who do believe in a deity would tend to say the fact that you get consistent morals across religions. I've got friends who are Satanists, for example, and they are some of the nicest people in the world. The fact that everyone does seem to have this moral compass within them. People who would believe in a deity would say, isn't that evidence to say that if we have morals baked into us, there might be a moral giver out there somewhere?
Right.
But that's another discussion. But another reason why people are drawn to the paranormal, particularly over religion, is because of evidence. When it comes to the paranormal, like for example, say ghost hunting, it specifically demands us to ask for evidence. So, when people go out on ghost hunts, they don't just sit in a room and say, like, "Oh, yeah, I just saw a ghost." They've got their EMF meters out, and they've got their temperature thermometers.
Yeah, I know.
And they're making copious notes, and they're gathering evidence. They're putting things to the test. So
yes,
they
they
go
are.
into a room, So they go into some creepy old abandoned asylum, let's say, and they've been told that there's a haunted room.
Yes.
And so they go into this cell and they sit there, but they don't just trust that there's a haunted room. They get out equipment to put it to the scientific test.
Agreed.
Now, to be fair, the degree of how scientific people employ these methods does vary between groups. Some people do it just waving things around; they don't really know what they're doing.
Right.
Other people do it very seriously and are very meticulous.
Yeah.
But it actively asks the believer to put it to the test. Religion, however, doesn't do that. So if I turned up at church tomorrow morning and said, listen, guys, don't mind me, but during the prayer time, I'm just going to set up my thermometers and EMF meters because I just want to test to see if God's in the room.
Well, that's so funny.
They would look at me like, what? Like, that's not how it works. You're supposed to just kind of believe this stuff.
Yeah.
Don't put it to the test. Now, ironically, that ignores the fact that, like, Gideon in the Bible specifically did an experiment with God to test if he was there, and did an actual test. So you can do tests in the Bible, but in churches they tend to say don't do that, and that puts off the modern mindset. And we're like, hang on a minute, you expect us to believe without evidence, and you're telling me what to do when I don't even trust you because so many of you are hypocrites. And you can understand why they look for a different form of spirituality, for want of a better term. The paranormal, I think, offers that. It offers like glimpses into another world and the possibility of life after death and having a companion in the stars. Who knows? All of these interesting things. But it doesn't necessarily tell you how to live your life or what to do. And it doesn't tell you have to just believe it. It says, go out and research yourself, do your evidence. And I think that's a positive, but it does also lead to the paranormal being an absolute wild west of ideas.
Right.
Like, people believe there's so many different beliefs.
Yes, there is.
And it's dizzying how many different thoughts there are. And so it can mean that the paranormal world is, well, for want of a better term, very messy when it comes to kind of, well, what is true? If you see a figure in your room at night, maybe a Christian might go demon or angel, but then the people in the paranormal community might say ghost, demon, skinwalker, elemental, sleep paralysis.
There you
go.
Succubus,
incubus.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm just saying when in a spiritual quest culture, when all bets are off and people can choose, don't be surprised to find that there are so many different options available.
I know. I mean, okay. So you have told us so much, okay, that I think that we need to kind of close it up. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because when I spoke to you first, my mind was like in a million different places, okay? And I got so jumbled up that I was like, I want to know more. I want to know more. I want to know more. But I don't want people to feel so overwhelmed with everything that you're saying, where they forget, okay, certain things that you've said. And just like me, there's been some things like we've talked about today that I forgot about, because I did tell you, I said, Peter, my mind just, this is a whole different topic, you guys, as we're talking about. I mean, so, I'd like to like let you close this up, and then, go over where they can find you really quick again. And you're welcome to come on and proceed into a new direction anytime that you want. So why don't do you have any last words on this?
Yeah, well, it's only to say that if you ever hear someone like me suggesting that the paranormal could be similar to religion, if I had heard that growing up, I would have been deeply insulted by that, because it would be implying that I was a drone or that I wasn't thinking myself, or I would hate that. But it's not supposed to be that. It's just to try and say, actually, it's a testament to our humanity, and it's to try and give us a sense of kinship and camaraderie with people who are different to us. So I find it difficult when I turn on, like, go through Twitter and I see certain Christians acting in a certain way. But when I step back from it, I have to remember, oh, they are looking for answers. They are as fearful as I am sometimes.
Right.
They have
Yeah.
scary things. And
Interesting. Woo.
and, and they're trying to find a way through, just like my Wiccan friends are my Satanist friends and others, and or my skeptic friends and my atheist friends. And so I'm very keen on us just all kind of respecting one another as best we can, calling out wrong behavior when
Yeah.
it's needed, and to say that this is a fundamentally human way to live, to
Yeah.
try and seek meaning outside of ourselves. But the paranormal is just particularly well suited for this moment in time. And that's why I'm not surprised to find that so much of it is growing. But yeah, I mean, the topics like this. I mean, this is my book. I write
Yeah. Yeah.
novels.
Show us your
Uh,
book. You can get it
yeah,
on Amazon.
yeah. You can get this. This is the American hardback version. So this is called "The Frighteners: A Journey Through Our Cultural Fascination with
Hmm.
the Macabre." And this is a book that took me to Transylvania and Rome and all across
Yeah. I
Britain
mean, you just
to
went all
try
these
and
places.
try
Yeah.
and understand why human beings have a morbid streak and why it's okay.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of
Great.
crazy stuff happened in that book, but
Yeah.
it's to seek to understand why people like monsters and true crime and horror films. But also, if people want to connect with me, if you go to peterlaws.co.uk, you'll find information not only on my books but also the podcasts that I do. Like I said,
Exactly.
Frightful, Our Curious Past, and Creepy Cove, and but also Uncanny is this other thing that I'm part of. So I know it's a lot to follow. But if you go to peterlaws.co.uk, you'll find me there. Find me on Twitter at
Great.
RevPeterLaws and all the
Well,
usual
I
places.
found
TikTok.
you. I found you on TikTok. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
I only
and
started
eh,
TikTok really a few weeks ago, and
yeah,
so
I was like, who are you? And I left you a message. I mean, the stuff you were
yes, I
talking
remember.
about, I was like, I mean, you guys will love this TikTok stuff he does. I mean, if anything, go watch a little thing on TikTok. You'll
Mm,
see what he does. And that's was my fascination. I was like, I got to talk to this guy. I don't
mm.
care if he's a movie star or what. I'm just going to ask him, can I interview you? And that's what
I'm
I do
glad you
all the
did.
time. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank
you've
you.
given us well, I want to say a bad word, but a ton of information, and
Feel free to say shitload.
a way that they can go and find you. peterlaws.com UK. All right.
Co.uk, so peterlaws.co.uk. But to be honest, if you just Google Peter Laws,
Yeah, they'll
it
find
probably
you.
will come up. Yeah,
Yeah, because I checked it all out just to make sure you were legit.
yeah, good plan. Yeah, LAWS,
Yeah.
Peter Laws.
Okay, and that'll be in the description. So I just am really grateful that you came on today. Thank you so much. I know
Thank
it's
you.
overwhelming, you guys. Okay, so just kind of open your mind to something a little bit different. And, peterlaws.com.uk, right, Peter? Um,
Co.uk.
yeah, and it'll also be on the description. You can find him on Facebook and just, I think they can message you, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter and if I follow you back, I can
Right, yeah.
message you, and then on Facebook as
Okay.
well.
And if you have any other questions, you can ask me and I can send you the way.
Mm.
So, okay, so we are done. And I want to thank you so much once again. And everybody out there, have an open mind. Okay, so thank you so much. Thanks for watching.